Mm, so you just wait a few minutes and
Okay,
let it come. Yeah.
no problem. And then you thought you were thinking an hour or less
Yeah.
than an hour?
Maximum. Yeah. Mm,
An
shouldn't
hour.
go more
Okay.
than. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay. I think there are a few people on LinkedIn,
Okay.
so I think we can just get started.
Okay.
And we can just upload the file as well. So for anyone that wants to catch this later, they can. So, hello guys. So we're joined today with Dr. Mindy Weinstein. So I'll just let her do her introductions, and then we'll go on with our conversation. So please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I'm excited to be here. And you already have my name, so Mindy Weinstein, but I am the author of the book Power of Scarcity, which came out at the end of 2022, published by McGraw Hill. And it's a business psychology book. So, for marketers, definitely something that you'll want to listen to as we talk about the principle of scarcity and how it works. And then I'm also the CEO of Market Mindshift, and we are a digital marketing agency in Arizona.
That's all. That's lovely. So again, I would just like to sort of start off by, learning more about your book and
Mhm.
specifically the concept of scarcity in the context of marketing. And you can also sort of tell us about how this idea sort of came about for you, and sort of what the origins of this conceptualization was.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'm going to start out, I'll tell you all about how I got into scarcity. But first, I want to define how I view scarcity. So, when we're going to be talking about scarcity today, I'm not talking about it from an economic standpoint. I'm talking about scarcity in terms of anything that's unavailable,
Hmm.
anything. So, and it can really cause a psychological impact on us. And so that's really what I'm going to be talking about. So, any type of restriction or unavailability. So, as you're listening to this and thinking about your marketing, it doesn't have to be a product that is sold out. There could be ways that you really bring in natural scarcity into what you're doing and just communicate it. Okay, so I'll give you the backstory because I do usually have people ask me of why scarcity of all the things to study and write about why that particular subject. And for me, it started when I was working on my PhD. And my PhD is in general psychology. And I was really getting deep into the factors that motivate us as human beings. I've always found that fascinating, even when I was a little kid, I would write stories on a typewriter and I'd always think about like, well, what would get someone's attention? Why would they want to read this? And so when I was working on my PhD, I focused heavily on those motivations. And the more and more that I dug into research, I found that of all the factors that exist out there, the one that seems to influence us the most, whether good or bad, is scarcity. And that's because the way that our brains are wired is we bring forward a lot of what our ancestors dealt with. So our ancestors were trying to survive when there was scarce resources. So water was scarce, food was scarce, shelter was scarce. And so we still have certain reactions when something is again unavailable or hard to
Hmm.
get. Our brain reacts the same way as we would have with a resource that we need for survival. So I thought that was really fascinating. And so I ended up doing my own research study on the topic. And sure enough, it by just adding a little word that indicates scarcity, we react to it. And I know you have more questions, but I want to elaborate on this
No,
because I get really excited talking about it. So
no.
part of this, like I said with the words, is that as I was looking into scarcity and studying it, I came across even neurological studies which showed the brain. It's really hard to argue with the brain scan because you can see the activity, you can see things lighting up in the brain. And so these two studies that really stood out to me, one hooked people up to an MRI, which means that they were scanning the brain, or actually both of them did that. But one study ended up showing the participants that they were an online auction. So it was a simulation, think eBay, like that kind of simulation, where they were bidding on products. The other one, they were getting exposed to ads that had like 20% off for today only or for 1 week only. And so what the researchers were doing is they were watching what the brain did. And they found two significant things. One, when faced with scarcity, the part of our brain that has to do with how you value things, meaning like putting a valuation. That whole
Hmm.
process lights up immediately, meaning our brain looks at something and says, this is scarce. It must be very high value. The other thing that we found that happens in these studies is that the part of your brain that has to do with making decisions lights up right away and it skips the normal process of what you would expect to see with decision making. And that shows us that when we're faced with scarcity, our brain puts us in that mode of like, you need to pay attention, you need to make your decision right now. And I just
Hmm.
thought that was so fascinating. And then I realized that a lot of businesses and brands have really built their businesses on the idea of scarcity, but not in a way that's unnatural, but just the fact that they already had something that made them different or something that, made them a little bit harder to get that really drew people in. And so that's what got me to go into this whole thing. And then what I started doing as I worked on my PhD, I finished that, did all my research. And then I looked into like, my gosh, I feel like this could be a book. and I started doing case studies and interviewed the former VP of global marketing at McDonald's. I interviewed the CEO and founder of 1-800-Flowers. I interviewed all these amazing people to see how they were using scarcity in their business. And it was fascinating because we have such a limited view on scarcity. We think it's just a product that's hard to find, or a company's doing it on purpose, telling you that there's only a certain amount left, but it's way bigger than that. So that's how I ended up writing the book. And I still am so fascinated by it because all of us, even if you don't feel like you fall to scarcity messages, we all do. It's just, again, it's the way our brains are wired.
Yeah, for sure. Could we say that this idea of scarcity is sort of parallel to creating exclusivity and
Mhm.
sort of offering limited options? Like manufacturer makes a new car and they only offer 50 allocations for that car. Is that sort of the same concept being applied here with scarcity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, exclusivity is part of scarcity. So, with scarcity, one thing to understand is there's different types. And so I break them down into 4 types. So, the
Hmm.
one that you're talking about is really a limited supply. But limited supply can be there really is only so many numbers or so
Hmm.
many that can be produced. But it could also be that it's exclusive. So you only offer so many, like you only take on so many clients or customers, or you only, yeah, produce a certain amount of that particular style or product. I mean, we see that with Nike. But then there's also piggybacking on that, there's limited edition. And that's also Nike, since I just said that. We'll throw that one in there where it's a product, but it's a slight twist on the original, and there's only so many available.
Hmm.
Then we have demand. And so demand is just a lot of people want it. I feel like that's everything that goes on TikTok, but that's a side story. But just high demand. So there's scarcity because there's a big demand for something. And then finally there's time related, which means that it's a sale, or for this time only we're offering this program. But yeah, exclusivity to me, like when a company doesn't know where they fit into the scarcity picture of, I want to use scarcity, I'm not really sure how, looking at something that elicits that exclusiveness can help. It could even be an event you have. It doesn't even have to be that your product line is exclusive. It could be that you have an event for your top customers and they're VIPs. Well, that makes people want to be part of that because we don't want any restriction on us. And so that elicits that whole scarcity response.
Okay. Um, so I also wanted to sort of go back on the aspect of survival and how that
Mhm.
sort of plays a role in this whole thing. So again, you say that this is a survival instinct that we sort of reach for scarce
Mhm.
resources, right?
Right.
But sort of the I would argue that that's sort of a utilitarian appeal that
Mhm.
uh, or an instinct that we have, where we sort of need something to survive, so we need to get it before it runs out.
Mm.
But this the way that marketers are using scarcity is often for products or services that aren't necessarily
Mhm.
utilitarian in their
Yep.
nature. They're
Right.
more sort of hedonic, or
Mhm.
there's an element of pleasure that you seek from purchasing that thing. So how would you respond to something like
Mhm.
this?
Well, and that goes back to what I was talking about, the brain scans, because our brain is not acting differently. It's looking at something that, yeah, scarcity for survival is food, water, shelter, but other scarcity, our brain still reacts the same way. It's
Hmm.
like it has a hard time differentiating between the two. And again, that's what we see in these neurological scans, which is hard to argue with that because the brain is acting a certain way. But I do want to say that with couple things, like for those that are listening, you're like, but marketers, like, do we want to be using this? So all of the things that I look at with scarcity, it's really just highlighting the real scarcity that exists, the real scarcity. So not saying like purposely of, for today only this is the only time we're gonna ever offer this, when that's not true.
Hmm.
That's not, people don't like that. And we have the internet, like all of us are online, we're all reading socials, so we know when stuff's fake. But I'm talking about things that for McDonald's, which is a great example, they do limited edition products. They come out
Yeah.
with the Shamrock Shake, and that's of course only around near St. Patrick's Day, in the US, or they have different things that they come out with. 1-800 Flowers will notate when there's a bestseller. Well, a bestseller is high demand, and that's a real thing, but our brains still will focus on that. So to answer your question, our brains just react. It's the way, again, that we're wired. But okay,
Mm.
one last thing. I'm getting on my little soapbox here.
Yeah.
Switching our hats for a second. So thinking from a consumer perspective, sometimes you're thinking like so am I going to always fall for scarcity? It doesn't necessarily mean that. Even though our brain's wired some way, it's subconsciously we're making those decisions. But when it's subconscious, you can think about it. You can stop and say like, do I really
Yeah.
need to buy this? And I mean, doesn't mean we're just all robots making purchases.
Yeah, for sure. So I just asked this sort of thing because I'm sort of studying something similar at this time. So
Yeah, I love it.
just flip the script for a minute. But yeah, so we're essentially currently being or evolving or being conditioned to, you know, sort of give more value to these things than maybe our ancestors did in, like more consumer goods instead of necessarily utilitarian survival things. So that's interesting to see that you've seen neural imaging of the sort of
Mhm.
activity taking place right in real time as well.
Right.
Yeah, so that's I think really really cool thing that I also like to see at some point. But so moving on, I'd also like to ask about market mind shift
Mhm.
and sort of primarily from the aspect of the trainings that
Mhm.
you offer and how that sort of helps the individuals and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, Market Mindshift, like I said, we're a marketing agency, specifically on digital marketing, but we infuse psychology into everything we're doing because even to me, like with all the technology that's out there, and of course, AI, everyone talks about AI. I mean, we know this technology is huge and we have so many things at our fingertips, but at the end of the day, we're reaching human beings. And so we always really focus on psychology. And so, like marketmindshift.com is our website. But the other thing that we are actually just getting ready to launch is a training program. And the training program is meant for marketers, new marketers. And so it's something that we're bringing in everything that like we use. So everything from our templates, the tools, the standard operating procedures, like everything is in here. And it's designed to help someone who either wants to really take their knowledge to another level and maybe they switched careers, or again they're new to the industry. It's really meant to be a mentorship, support, and training all rolled into one. And so yeah, that's what we're offering. We're getting ready to launch it next month, and so yeah, we're really excited. But even this stuff with scarcity, I mean, we bring all of this into the mix, really.
That's again pretty cool to see that someone's done a lot of this research and is helping out other people as well.
Yeah,
uh,
well, one thing I will say, if you're interested in that too, right now, because we're getting ready to launch it, so we don't have a lot out there, but you can go to powerofscarcity.com, and I actually have a little download you can get scarcity information that we're talking about, but that'll also put you on the mailing list. So we'll notify you once the training's available. So you get a free resource, and the resource is basically it's a PDF, but it's when to use which type of scarcity and some examples too. Because a lot of what we're talking about is theory, but this has a lot of examples as well.
yeah, that's brilliant. So you heard her, guys. You can go ahead and do that. I certainly will be doing that as well. So I'd also like to ask about sort of your keynote speaking experience as well,
Mhm.
and sort of what goes into that, and what sort of subjects do you cover in your talks,
Yeah.
and um, what sort of motivates you, and what do you think motivates the audience as well to attend these conferences and sessions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've been speaking at marketing conferences For more than 10 years now at this point. It's been a long time. And so, I've always taught on digital marketing and anything from, how to connect with your audience, content to write, the technical SEO part to the psychology part. It's something that I have a lot of experience with. And so I love doing it. So for me, the speaking part, I also have a background as an educator. So
Hmm.
I have been a professor for several years. I'm teaching at University of Denver as an adjunct right now too, in addition to my business and speaking. But my heart's always been in educating people. And so I feel like with conferences, I love being able to teach someone how to do what I have learned works and to make it tangible of here's the way that I've done it, here's the why, here's the how, and then really motivating people. And so I love speaking. So I usually joke that I am more of a teacher than a speaker because I won't get up there. You're not going to be like standing on your chair going like rah rah, like listening to me, but you will have so many takeaways. And I think that's a huge thing. So anyone who is considering getting into speaking, I would encourage you to think about what does your audience need to hear in terms of what can be their takeaways? What can they walk away with after they've listened to you, and what knowledge do you have? Because we do all have knowledge. And so that's just the best part, is being able to share what you know.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a very noble pursuit that you've taken on, and a very important one as well, to sort of spread knowledge and
Yep.
also inspire people to build their own knowledge.
You said it better. Spread knowledge. I like that. Yeah, spread knowledge. Get up there and you spread your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So in line with that, I would like to ask, if you currently have any research ongoing that you're working on, similar things for marketing, or if you've got another book in the works, that you're working on as well.
Yeah,
That'd
that's a
be
really great question. Because I keep getting that question about the book. So I don't have another book in the works yet. It takes a lot of time, I'll tell you, to get these books out there, especially because has a lot of research. It's case studies and all these things in it. So, but as far as research going, what I've been working on, I have really been focusing on creating research that has to do with words that cause the audience to take action, which of course we know that. I mean, people talk about trigger words and all of that, but I
yeah,
am focusing a little bit more on like the scarcity side and other type of influence factors, and how can you change just the simple wording to make a difference. And so that's one of the things I'm working on. And this one is like a little bit further down the road, is I want to really focus on a research study for women in business. And so I'm gonna kind of keep it like, I don't have a ton to share on that front yet, but that's something that I have in the works. And it's really still has to do with influence factors and how does that play a role in everything. And so it's a little bit of the marketing business side of me rolled into that.
yeah, that's quite interesting. I'd love to read some of your work. If it's available on the internet, I'll definitely go look it up. Um, so at this point, I'd also like to open up the floor for any questions. If anyone from the audience has any questions, from LinkedIn, YouTube, anywhere, we'd be happy to take on some of your questions as well. Um,
And in the meantime, I can give some examples too, kind of spur
yeah,
some
sure.
things, since the topic here is driving conversions with scarcity.
Yeah.
And so a lot, again, is what we talked about is theoretical, but from a marketing standpoint, like, how does this really work? And so I will tell you that I know businesses that have taken advantage of the time related scarcity, which
Hmm.
that's when you got to be a little careful. People sometimes get annoyed with it, but those are things like countdown timers. Countdown
Yeah.
timers, even if we feel like we don't like them, they actually make a difference. I know one company that when they were doing an online sale, of incorporating the countdown timer that would show how much time until the sale was over, and they saw a 40% increase in their sales. I mean, that's huge. Conversions, changing words, like instead of saying we are taking, if you're a consulting company, let's say, and you're like, well, we only work with so many clients at a time, instead of saying something like that, say something like, we work with 5 clients at a time. We have 2 spots available right now.
Hmm.
And so it's you can put that into your messaging. So whether it's your sales messaging, your emails, but you could count down. There's again countdown timers you can put into social. But here's another, and this is so those are just kind of throwing out some ideas for you. But you could do closed groups. So you could do closed Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups for customers where you're giving them certain information. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do to really bring in the whole scarcity side of things. And this is, I'll open it up again for, again, if there's questions, but I actually, one example that people don't think about that it's scarcity is airlines. So it actually what I'm looking up in my calendar, even though no one can see it up there. But so American Airlines is one that I fly all the time here in the
Yeah.
US. So I'm like really focused on the whole rewards program, which a lot of us do because you want to have a certain tier and get all the benefits available with that. Well, I thought what they did was really, really smart recently. So I've been trying to get to a certain tier, like a lot of us, but they put out emails and then reminder emails of letting everyone know that to get to the next tier within their loyalty program, they were going to have a cutoff of February 29th was going to be the last day that you could get your points. And it was interesting because I didn't really talk to anyone about that, but I was thinking, first thought was, how far off am I from getting to that next tier? I now have 2 or 3 weeks to do this. And I started obsessing with it. I mean, it was ridiculous. But then I started talking to people here and there, and I would say something about American and realized so many people were doing the same thing. And so it was these emails that they were just reminding people, but it was top of mind for everyone. I found myself trying to figure out like how can I pre-book a trip just to make sure that I get the points. And the ironic thing for me is the only difference between the tier that I was in to the next tier was going to be I could board in group 1 instead of group 2. Like it's not really a huge thing, but again, our brains get so activated, and I thought that was so smart because here again, I mean, we all know the airline stuff, right? We know the rewards, but the fact that they were doing the reminders and they were doing the date, that it got you really focused on it. So there's things that businesses can do. We all have natural scarcity. And even if it's just something that makes your business different, like it's a product only you offer, well, highlighting that in your social is going to be huge, or any of your marketing, because that's going to still elicit that, hey, I want to get this because I can only get this from this company.
Okay. So I have a question that sort of popped into my mind, sort of just
Yeah.
critically looking at this, considering that I've been reading up on the Journal of Business Ethics quite a bit as well.
Mhm.
Is so again, there is sort of a gray area where
Yeah.
you know, creating scarcity becomes unethical to an extent. So where do we draw that line as practitioners in
Yeah.
marketing? You
Yeah,
know.
no, that's also a good question because I actually have a whole chapter devoted in my book to that because I actually, when I was working on the book, one of my biggest concerns was that I was going to be giving everyone tools on how to just take advantage of consumers. And I'm like, I don't want that at all. I just thought it was really interesting that scarcity exists a lot of times in our business and we're just not highlighting it. So I definitely have an answer for that. So in no way should you ever make up scarcity. So
Hmm.
don't say that something is almost sold out if it's not almost sold out. Don't say
Yeah.
that something is a limited edition when it's not a limited edition. I mean, don't keep doing the same sale all the time because what's going to happen is you're going to turn off customers, and the damage that you're going to do because they see through what you're doing is going to be far worse than any gain you're going to have. And so I have lots of examples in the book, but one of them that was just interesting was this thing, and it was actually talked about on Reddit. I mean, that's how it came up because we're all sharing information, but it was a cosmetic company that was basically faking scarcity. And so they would say, so many things were left, but they were just completely making it up. And so a consumer caught wind of that, and next thing you know, it spread everywhere and people are talking about, people aren't going to buy anymore. So you never want to do that because it could hurt your business. And also we want to be good humans. I mean, that's my like be a good human. So the things I'm talking about, we already do promotions in marketing, and so why not, that's time related, but why not have a little bit more fun with it? Like I said, however you want to spin it, but make it real. If it is something that's high demand, be honest about it. And you can say something's a bestseller. You can say something's most popular. You can be honest, but definitely don't fake it. And then
Yeah.
limited supply is the one that's, you can control that one quite a bit. That one's you got to be careful with, but you can do it still ethically. So again, if you're a consultant, you can only take so many clients. So why not tell people you can only take that many clients? Or if you only have certain, again, the product is only available right now or it's special, tell people. Just don't flat out make it up, because trust me, it's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. We see through that. We get annoyed. And I even feel like, sorry, I'm like going on, but I feel like with scarcity too, sometimes when I've told people this is what I've written about, I get the response of, oh, it's always email. They always say email. Oh, I hate those emails that I get that says, today only. They just annoy me. So you got to think about that and think about your audience and don't be fake.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just being honest with the consumer
Right.
is the best approach.
Yeah, and just kind of piggyback, so with the customers, that's so something else just that was really interesting. So as I was doing my case studies on scarcity, so when I say case studies, and I was talking to the different organizations. So I already mentioned McDonald's, 1-800-Flowers. There were some other ones. But one of the things, it was really interesting that came up over and over again was that through the correct usage, I should say, of scarcity, these companies were building relationships with customers because they were having fun with scarcity. They were having something come out only, for a limited time, but they would make it really fun and they do this whole promo and people would talk about it and they really wanted to create that relationship. The
Hmm.
other thing that was interesting that came out of all of this, a common theme, was that even would build loyalty. Like people want to feel, especially the exclusive side. Like if you make it and you feel like you're a VIP customer, you're going to keep buying and you feel good about it. And so there was the loyalty side, the relationship side, fun and excitement came up over and over again. Even community came up. And I was thinking that's so interesting because people don't think about that. But again, if you're using it in a way that speaks to your customers, that's huge. And even that, and if one of the things too about customers is not every type of scarcity is going to work for every audience you have either. So that's a huge thing too. For example, if you know that your customers really like things that are unique, then you're not going to want to push, oh, this is we're in high demand, this keeps selling out. They don't want that. They want something that's going to make them different. So they're going to like something that's a limited edition or exclusive, with that limited supply. But if it's someone who, your audience wants to feel part of a group, well, then show them things that are most popular or bestsellers, because they're going to want to do that because they're going to want to conform. So those are the things to think about. But if you go like that download that I talked about, if you go to powerofscarcity.com, I lay all of that out. So you can see like, this is the type of scarcity to use for this type of customer. And here's some examples.
Yeah, you guys should definitely do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so again, if anyone has any questions, you can ask them now, or you can also leave them in the comments wherever you're viewing this, and we can try to get a response back from Dr. Weinstein over here, and we can get your queries answered. So yeah, for sure. I think we'll close this out in a few moments. If Mindy has anything to say, please, you have the floor right now.
Mhm. Well, and as if think questions are coming up, which is some closing thoughts for everyone too, just to make it more tangible. So if you're thinking about how can I use this in my marketing campaigns, number one, first up, think about what makes your business different. So what is that real scarcity that exists? So is it what makes you different? Is you have a product no one else has? Is it that you do have only a limited supply of something? I mean, whatever it is, like brainstorm that. Like, what is that scarcity that already exists? Then that's step number two, like really think about your customers. What do I know about my customers? Do they want to be unique? Do they want to be part of a community? What do I know? Because then the step three is figuring out which type of scarcity to use. If it's, hey, they want to be feel valued and special, well, I'm going to come up with something that's maybe a VIP customers, and I'm going to send emails, or I might do some social media groups with those people. And then finally, the last thing is what we've been talking about. Do it ethically. Do it ethically. At the end of the day, like you do it ethically, and you're going to have all those benefits from it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a very important element of it.
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't think we have any questions
Okay,
at the moment. So I think we can wrap this up here.
great.
And yeah, so this session will be available on various platforms that Social Champ is on. And obviously, you guys can always comment and ask us your questions, and we can try and get an answer for you for that as well. So thanks again, Mindy Weinstein, for joining us today. And I certainly gained a lot of insight into your book and the sort of topic of scarcity in the context of marketing. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.